Patience is not just the ability to wait. It is the ability to remain spiritually anchored while you wait. It is one of the most profound virtues Allah praises repeatedly in the Qur'an, and it is the quiet force behind every believer who ever accomplished anything meaningful. When we talk about patience, we're not speaking about a passive resignation to circumstances. We're speaking about a deep internal strength, an active choice to trust the wisdom of Allah when His plan unfolds in ways we cannot yet understand. And when a believer embraces this form of patience, something remarkable happens. Allah Himself promises to be with those who embody it, not metaphorically, not symbolically, actually with them, supporting them, guiding them, elevating them, and carrying them through the weight of their challenges. In a world where everything is instant messages, instant food, instant gratification, true patience has become rare. Our routines are shaped around convenience, and we've grown accustomed to quick results. But Allah, in His infinite wisdom, designed our spiritual development to unfold slowly. Not because He cannot grant blessings instantly, but because we cannot become the people He wants us to be instantly. Growth takes time, character takes molding, hearts take softening, and discipline takes repetition. Patience is the vehicle through which the soul matures, and Allah knows that without this process, we would never recognize our own potential. When Allah says He is with the patient, it means He is with the ones who refuse to give up even when the road stretches far longer than they expected. He is with the ones who wake up every morning asking for the strength to keep moving even when their hearts are heavy. He is with the ones whose eyes tear in dua because they have been praying for the same thing day after day, month after month, yet they still believe that He hears them. He is with the student struggling to stay focused, with the parent trying to hold the family together, with the believer fighting old habits, with the one resisting temptation, with the one longing for relief. These are not small struggles, they are jihad of the soul, and Allah honors them with His closeness. But you see, patience is not merely about suffering through difficulty. It is about suffering through difficulty with dignity . It is about holding onto your principles when it would be easier to compromise. It is about refusing the shortcuts that betray your values. It is about staying steady when impulsiveness offers temporary comfort. This is where Allah's companionship becomes a lifeline, because patience built on faith is a declaration that you trust Him more than you trust your emotions, your fears, or your frustrations. There is a reason the prophets were the epitome of patience. They were not patient because their lives were easy. They were patient because their mission demanded an unshakable heart. They faced rejection, ridicule, and isolation. They witnessed the suffering of their people. They carried responsibilities we cannot fathom. Yet through it all, their patience never wavered, because they understood that success does not arrive on our schedule. It arrives on Allah's schedule. And when it does, it arrives perfectly timed. Many of us, however, have fallen into the habit of spiritual impatience. We say, I made dua, but nothing changed. I tried being consistent, but it's not working. I tried to be disciplined, but I got tired. But what if the real issue isn't that you're tired? What if the issue is that you're undisciplined? What if the real test wasn't about getting results quickly, but about whether you would persist long enough to prove to your own soul that you mean what you say? Patience is not magic that turns every difficulty into ease instantly. It is the steady force that transforms you while Allah unfolds the ease at the right moment. That transformation is the real miracle, and perhaps this is why Allah ties His presence to those who are patient, because patience reveals sincerity. Anyone can be grateful when they receive blessings, but only the sincere can remain steadfast when blessings are delayed. Anyone can praise Allah when times are easy, but only the committed can praise Him when they are tired, overwhelmed, or uncertain. Patience strips away pretense. It exposes the core of your faith. It forces you to look inside and ask, do I trust Allah only when I see His blessings, or do I trust Him because I know His wisdom is beyond my vision? And when a believer reaches that point of clarity, Allah elevates them by granting His nearness. Patience also changes the way you interpret hardship. Rather than seeing challenges as punishments or failures, the patient believer sees them as opportunities to grow, to refine intention, to strengthen discipline, and to deepen reliance on Allah. When you begin to view challenges this way, hardship stops feeling like an interruption and begins to feel like a pathway. You stop wishing for difficulty to disappear, and you start asking Allah for the strength to rise through it. You stop running from struggle, and you begin recognizing it as spiritual training that prepares you for the next chapter of your life. And this is where discipline comes in, because patience without discipline becomes passive, and discipline without patience becomes harsh. But when these two qualities combine, they produce a believer who is steady, composed, and purposeful. Discipline gives patience structure, patience gives discipline soul. Together they create transformation. Together they allow you to say, I may not see results yet, but I will keep going because Allah sees my effort, and that alone is enough to keep my heart firm. This is where true growth begins. Imagine how powerful your life becomes when you stop expecting every struggle to feel comfortable, when you stop expecting the path to be easy, when you stop saying, I'm too tired, and start saying, Allah is with the patient, so I will continue. This shift in mindset is revolutionary. It turns obstacles into stepping stones. It turns pressure into progress. It turns uncertainty into trust. It turns the ordinary believer into someone capable of achieving greatness, not because of their own strength, but because they align themselves with the divine promise that Allah is with those who are patient. So when the moment comes, and it always comes, when you feel overwhelmed, when doubts whisper, when discouragement settles in, remind yourself, Allah is closest to you when you show Sabr. Your tears are seen, your silence is heard, your internal battles are known, and your endurance is rewarded always. Sometimes in ways you can measure, and sometimes in ways only Allah sees. But never is patience wasted. Never is a struggle overlooked. Never is a sincere effort forgotten, because patience is not just a virtue, patience is a connection. And every moment of Sabr is a moment when Allah is with you, and that is enough. Discipline is a word many people misunderstand. When they hear it, they imagine restriction, rigidity, or a loss of comfort. But in reality, discipline is one of the greatest gifts a person can give themselves. It is the bridge between wanting a better life and actually building one. It is the quiet force that shapes habits, molds character, and pushes you past the limits that your excuses try to impose. And within our spiritual journey, discipline is not separate from patience. It is an extension of it. Patience is the endurance of the heart, and discipline is the consistency of the limbs. Together, they give your intentions life. When we say, you're not tired, you're undisciplined, it is not meant to belittle anyone's struggle. It is a reminder that most of us have been trained to operate based on emotion rather than intention. You pray when you feel it, you study when you're motivated, you work on yourself when the mood is right. But this emotional approach to life is weak and unreliable. Emotions fluctuate daily. They rise and fall like waves, and anyone who builds their routines on the wave of feeling will never remain steady. In contrast, discipline ignores the tide of emotions and chooses commitment instead. Discipline says, even if I don't feel like it, I will show up. And that is exactly what transforms a believer from someone with dreams into someone with results. Look at the acts of worship Allah made obligatory. 5 daily prayers, not when you feel spiritual, not when your schedule is convenient, not when your energy is high, but at set times every single day, regardless of mood, weather, stress, or circumstances. Why? Because Allah is teaching us discipline. He is teaching us that worship based only on emotion collapses the moment emotion disappears. But a believer who trains themselves to obey consistently becomes someone whose heart is stable, whose priorities are clear, and whose life is organized around Allah rather than around whims. The problem today is not that people are lazy. The problem is that people rely on motivation instead of training their souls to be disciplined. Motivation is fleeting, and it belongs to beginners. Discipline, however, belongs to those who are serious about growth. Think of any great accomplishment in your life, whether spiritual or worldly. It wasn't motivation that carried you to the end. It was repetition, commitment, and showing up even when you didn't feel like it. That is discipline. And Islam encourages this deeply. The Prophet taught us that Allah loves the deeds that are consistent, even if they are small. Why? Because consistency shapes the heart, it strengthens resolve, it builds a relationship with Allah that is steady, dependable, and sincere. There is an internal battle that takes place within every believer. On one side is desire for comfort, entertainment, distractions, ease. On the other side is discipline, a call to rise, to push, to strive, to aim higher. When you listen to desire, you get temporary pleasure. When you listen to discipline, you get long-term fulfillment and divine reward. But this battle is not fought once, it is fought every day, sometimes every hour. And the truth is, most people aren't losing because they are weak. They're losing because they have never trained themselves to push back against desire. They assume that if something feels difficult, it must mean they're tired. In reality, it means their discipline muscle is weak. The disciplined believer understands that discomfort is not a sign to stop, it is a sign to grow. When you sit to recite Qur'an and your mind wanders after 5 minutes, that is not tiredness. That is the part of you that hasn't been trained yet. When you try waking up for Fajr and you snooze the alarm, that is not exhaustion. That is the undisciplined self resisting the change you're trying to introduce. When you intend to control your tongue, control your anger, lower your gaze, limit your distractions, or build consistency in worship, the early stages will feel heavy, not because they're impossible, but because you're breaking old habits and building new ones. Discipline is painful in the beginning, natural in the middle, and liberating in the end. And here's something many people overlook. Discipline is one of the greatest forms of gratitude to Allah. Why? Because Allah gives you the gift of time, the gift of health, the gift of intellect, the gift of guidance, and discipline is how you honor those gifts. When you structure your life with purpose, you are saying, Ya Allah, I value the blessings you gave me enough to use them wisely. But when you allow laziness, distraction, and inconsistency to dominate your life, you're effectively saying, these blessings don't matter enough for me to protect them. Discipline is gratitude in action. You will notice that the people who achieve remarkable spiritual strength are not the ones with the most free time or the most comfort. They are the ones who impose structure upon themselves. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They don't wait for inspiration. They don't negotiate with their excuses. They simply do what needs to be done, and Allah rewards their consistency by strengthening their heart. That is why disciplined people often appear calmer, more focused, more spiritually centered. They are not relying solely on their emotions. They are relying on habits that continuously pull them back to Allah. Some people hear all of this and think, but discipline is hard. Yes, it is. Growth is hard. Change is hard. But do you know what else is hard? Staying the same, living with regret, watching opportunities pass by, realizing you wasted years, feeling spiritually disconnected, struggling with the same sins over and over again. Discipline is hard, but so is a life without it. At least discipline gives you progress, clarity, and honor. A lack of discipline only gives you guilt and stagnation, and here is the beautiful part. Allah does not expect perfection from you. He expects effort, He expects sincerity, He expects the willingness to keep trying even when you slip. Discipline is not about never falling, it is about always standing back up. And every time you rise after a slip, Allah sees that. Every time you recommit after a moment of weakness, Allah records that. Every time you struggle to remain consistent, Allah rewards that. Because discipline is a form of struggle, and Allah promises reward for every sincere struggle made for His sake. If you want to change your life, you cannot wait for motivation. You must build discipline. Don't wait to feel inspired. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. Start now, even in the smallest ways. Build routines around your worship. Structure your day so that Allah is at the center, not an afterthought. Train your desires to submit to your principles, discipline yourself to rise above excuses, and you'll discover that what you once believed was tiredness was simply the soul resisting change. And when you build discipline in your worldly life, your studies, your work, your habits, you will find it spilling naturally into your spiritual life as well. The believer who trains their body and mind becomes someone whose heart is capable of greater endurance. Discipline in one area strengthens discipline in all areas. And this is how Allah's help arrives. When you put in the effort to organize your life, Allah blesses that effort with barakah, clarity, and strength. You're not tired. You're capable of far more than you think. You only need to discipline the self that keeps convincing you otherwise. When patience and discipline come together, something extraordinary unfolds in the life of a believer. One without the other is incomplete. Patience alone can become passive, an internal endurance that has no outward expression. And discipline alone can become harsh, a rigid routine without spiritual warmth. But when patience fuels discipline and discipline shapes patience, the believer steps into a state where both inner strength and outward effort are aligned. It is in that harmony that Allah's help becomes most visible. It is in that balance that true growth begins. Think of patience as the heart's resilience and discipline as the body's movement. Patience says, I trust Allah's timing, while discipline says, I will do my part every day until His promise unfolds. If you have patience without discipline, you are waiting without moving. If you have discipline without patience, you are moving without trusting. But when you combine the two, you walk your path with a calm heart and a determined step. And that is when Allah opens doors you never expected. Most people separate these qualities in their minds. They think patience means sitting silently through difficulty, and discipline means pushing aggressively toward goals. But spiritually, the two are deeply connected. Patience gives your discipline purpose. Discipline gives your patience direction. One keeps your heart steady, the other keeps your feet steady. Together, they create a believer who is not shaken by delays, not discouraged by setbacks, and not distracted by temporary emotions. This is the believer who experiences Allah's help in ways subtle and powerful. We all know what it feels like to expect quick results. You start praying more, and you want instant peace. You begin reading Qur'an, and you want immediate understanding. You start working on a habit, and you want overnight transformation. But the Son of Allah is that spiritual growth comes gradually. He could give us everything instantly, but instant results produce fragile hearts. Gradual results produce strong ones. And this is where patience steps in. It teaches you to hold on through the slow process, to remain committed even when the reward is not yet visible. But patience alone isn't enough. While you are waiting, something must happen, some movement, some repetition, some disciplined effort. You don't wait for a man to increase, you feed it daily. You don't wait to feel spiritually strong. You build spiritual strength through consistent practice. This is the role of discipline. If patience is the soil, discipline is the seed. If patience is the journey, discipline is the footsteps. When you combine them, life becomes a process of steady, meaningful growth. There are times when people lose patience not because the path is difficult, but because their discipline is inconsistent. They say, I've been trying for so long. But when you examine their effort, you find that so long means trying for a week, stopping for 2, returning for 3 days, and then losing momentum again. That is not patience. That is inconsistency. True patience is shown through disciplined effort. When you continue working with sincerity, even when results feel distant, that is patience. When you commit to routines that elevate your soul, even when motivation is low, that is discipline. Allah sees both, and He rewards both, and the reward is not only in the hereafter, it arrives in this world too. When patience and discipline merge, Allah grants clarity. He removes confusion. He strengthens your resolve. He eases the heaviness of your heart. He places barakah in your time, your actions, your energy. Suddenly, the things you struggled to maintain begin to feel natural. The habits you once forced become part of who you are. The prayers that once felt heavy become your comfort. The Qur'an that once felt distant becomes your companion. This transformation is not only from your effort, it is from Allah's help responding to that effort. The companions understood this deeply. They faced immense challenges emotionally and physically, but their patience was not passive, it was active. They remained disciplined in their worship, in their commitments, in their sacrifices, even when the circumstances were stacked against them. And it was in those moments of combined patience and discipline that Allah's support descended upon them. Victory doesn't descend upon those who wait without working, nor upon those who work without trusting. It descends upon those who balance both. The same principle applies in our personal struggles. Whether you are trying to overcome a sin, build a habit, improve your character, strengthen your relationship with Allah, or grow in any aspect of your life, the formula is the same. You need patience to stay committed through setbacks. You need discipline to show up daily. If you rely on emotion, you will quit. If you rely on motivation, you will fluctuate. But if you rely on patience and discipline, you will move forward steadily, even if slowly. And steady progress is beloved by Allah. You will notice something profound. The moment you truly commit to both patience and discipline, Allah will place in your life moments of ease that remind you He sees you. You will feel your heart lighten unexpectedly. You will find solutions appearing from places you did not anticipate. You will feel strength at times when you expected weakness. This is Allah responding to your endurance and effort. This is His promise in action, but you must understand that patience and discipline do not eliminate hardship, they elevate you above it. They do not remove the test, they strengthen you through it. Some people pray for Allah to change their situation, but sometimes Allah wants to change you before He changes the situation. And that change happens through the daily grind of discipline and the quiet endurance of patience. Imagine a believer who wakes up every day deciding, I will keep going. Even if they fell yesterday, even if they feel discouraged, even if life is heavy, even if results haven't appeared yet. That insistence day after day, choice after choice is powerful. Allah loves that resolve. He honors it. He amplifies it. Every step taken with sincerity is a step taken with His support. And when Allah supports you, there is no limit to what you can become. Some people look at disciplined, patient believers and think they're naturally strong. No, they aren't. They trained themselves, they struggled, they slipped, they pushed, they prayed, they kept going. And Allah strengthened them because they showed Him through their consistency that they were serious. Spiritual greatness is never accidental. It is a product of sustained effort supported by divine guidance. And the beauty of this path is that you do not walk it alone. With every moment of patience, Allah is with you. With every moment of discipline, you are moving toward Him. When the two meet, your life becomes filled with barakah, clarity, and purpose. You begin to realize that ease was never found in comfort. Ease was always found in commitment. Success was never found in speed. It was found in steadiness. And Allah's help was never delayed. It was waiting for you to show the discipline that proves the sincerity of your patience. Combine patience with discipline, and you will see Allah's help in your life in ways you never imagined. One of the greatest illusions of our time is the belief that growth depends on motivation. People wait for a spark, an emotional wave, a moment of excitement before they take action. They wait for inspiration to align, for energy to rise, for the mood to become perfect. But life does not reward those who wait for motivation. Life rewards those who act with purpose, regardless of how they feel in the moment. And spiritually, the same principle applies even more powerfully. Your relationship with Allah, your habits, your discipline, your character, none of these grow because you felt motivated. They grow because you chose to act even when motivation wasn't there. We must stop waiting for the right feeling to do what is right. Feelings are fleeting. They fluctuate daily. Some mornings you wake up with focus. Other mornings you wake up with heaviness. Some days you feel inspired to pray extra rakas or recite Qur'an, and other days your heart feels dry. But if your spiritual life is dictated by your emotions, you'll live in cycles strong for a week, disconnected the next. This inconsistency does not come from a lack of sincerity. It comes from relying on a system that was never meant to lead your life. The Prophet did not teach us to worship only when we feel it. He taught us to show up consistently, regardless of mood. That is why Allah placed obligations at fixed times. It trains the soul to operate on purpose, not emotion. When you stop waiting for motivation, you start stepping into purpose. Purpose is steady. Purpose is quiet. Purpose doesn't shout for attention the way motivation does, but purpose stays. Purpose keeps your heart anchored when your emotions pull you in different directions. Purpose turns your worship into a commitment rather than a hobby. Purpose makes you someone who acts with clarity rather than confusion. And the truth is, anyone who has ever attained spiritual strength did so not because they felt amazing every day, but because they acted with discipline even when their heart wanted ease. There will be days when you feel spiritually low, days when the weight of life distracts your mind, days when your heart doesn't respond the way you wish it would. But those days are exactly when discipline matters most. Because discipline carries you through the valleys of emotion. Discipline says, I may not feel inspired today, but I will worship Allah anyway. Discipline reminds you that worship is not an event, it is a relationship. And just like any relationship, consistency is what keeps it alive. Stop waiting for life to become calm so you can start improving. Stop waiting for your mind to settle before you begin building your habits. Stop waiting for your heart to feel ready before you repent, or reflect, or return to Allah. The Shaitan loves waiting. He whispers, not now, maybe tomorrow, maybe when you're stronger, maybe when you feel it. He doesn't need to make you sin, he just needs to make you delay. And delay is enough to weaken your resolve, your willpower, your connection with Allah. But when you act with purpose, you break this cycle. You take back control of your spiritual life. You tell your nafs, you do not decide when I worship, I decide. And this shift in mindset is powerful. It frees you from emotional dependency. It gives you spiritual independence. It transforms you from someone who reacts to their feelings into someone who leads their feelings. You become a person who understands that discipline is what shapes the soul, not temporary bursts of motivation. Why do so many people start strong but fall quickly? Because they wait for emotion to sustain them. But emotion is not designed for endurance. Emotion is a spark. Discipline is the fire that keeps burning. You can't build anything meaningful on a spark. You build on slow, steady flame. That flame is the discipline of small daily actions, reading a few verses of Qur'an consistently, praying on time with focus, making dua even when your heart feels distant, resisting sin even when temptation rises, pushing yourself to do what is right when comfort calls you in another direction. And here's the beauty, when you act with purpose, the heart eventually follows. Your feelings catch up to your actions, your emotions rise to the level of your commitment. You begin to feel the sweetness of worship you once struggled with. You begin to crave the peace that comes from consistency. You begin to discover that your heart becomes more alive not by waiting for spiritual emotion, but by feeding it through disciplined action. The one who waits for the heart to feel alive before acting will struggle endlessly, but the one who acts for Allah's sake will find life entering their heart gradually and beautifully. We must understand that the people who appear strong in their faith did not start strong. They started inconsistent. They started unsure. They started battling their own laziness, desires, and distractions. They stumbled and fell. They restarted many times, but they kept choosing purpose over emotion. And because of that, Allah placed barakah in their efforts. Allah gave them firmness. Allah put light in their hearts. Allah guided their steps. People see the finished version, the disciplined version, the spiritually grounded version, but they don't see the early days when that person fought with themselves every morning just to get out of bed for Fajr or struggled to read even a single page of Qur'an. That journey was not built on consistent motivation, it was built on consistent commitment. The truth is, you don't need motivation to change, you need to stop depending on it. The moment you accept that discipline, not emotion, is the engine of your spiritual life, everything changes. You stop surrendering to mood swings. You stop letting laziness dictate your behavior. You stop being held back by internal narratives that whisper, "You're too tired, you can do it later, you're not feeling it today." You begin to understand that the self is trained by repetition. The heart is softened by consistency, the mind is cleared through structure, and Allah opens doors for the one who shows him they are willing to walk toward him even when the path feels heavy. Sometimes, waiting for motivation is actually a form of fear. You're afraid to start without the perfect feeling. Because if you're not emotionally inspired, you fear you won't succeed. But success doesn't require emotional inspiration. It requires commitment. Allah is with those who strive, not those who wait for the right moment to begin striving. The right moment is now. The right day is today. The right state is whatever state you're in. Because Allah does not ask you to be perfect, He asks you to be sincere. If you keep waiting to feel motivated, you will lose years. You will stay stuck in patterns you don't like. You will watch opportunities pass. You will feel frustrated with yourself because deep down you know you could do more. You just haven't disciplined yourself to act. But when you replace waiting with doing, everything opens, everything shifts. You begin to realize that the first step is always the hardest, but once taken, Allah places ease in the next step, and the next, and the next. You stop waiting to feel ready, and you start building readiness through your actions. You stop waiting for motivation, and you start creating momentum through discipline. You stop waiting for the heart to lead the way, and you start leading your heart toward Allah. Stop waiting for the feeling, start acting for the sake of Allah, and the feeling will follow.